much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to speak at this forum. This is the Project Citizens Foundation. As has been mentioned, I've been a resident in Hong Kong for 15 years, which means I'm a permanent resident twice over. I don't know if that makes me a citizen or not.
It does.
It does? That's the legal advice. I'm very happy to be speaking here today as a citizen, honorary citizen. I'm not going to. We've heard very detailed discussion already from Professor Chan, and there will be detailed discussion a little bit later on from other speakers about details of the ordinance, the various university ordinances in Hong Kong, and also models from around the world of how we might rethink the governance structures of universities. So I'm not going to go into the details of any of that in this talk that I'm giving today. The title I've given is "Can We Keep Politics Out of the University?" And I'm going to begin, as philosophers always do, but not just with a question, but I'll ask a question about the question before I give you an answer. And the question about the question is why, in a forum on academic freedom and university autonomy, would I be wanting to address the question, can we keep politics out of the university? And I guess for that, the context for me, when I was invited to speak today, was what I thought one of the more general questions that comes up in a lot of the discussion and the debate is precisely about the role of politics in universities. We've already heard Professor Chan talking about the context of what's been happening most recently at various universities in Hong Kong, especially at the University of Hong Kong. That it comes out of a context of a political movement, the Umbrella Movement and Occupy, which occurred in 2014. And at that time, coming out of that, one of the major criticisms that has been made against the students and staff of various universities has been that they're spending their time on politics rather than doing what they should be doing. And that's the general question I want to talk about today, is what actually should we be doing? Is it the case that we should be keeping out of politics? Is it the case that politics should be kept out of the university? Or is that itself perhaps a misguided notion, and is it based on a misunderstanding of what the university is and in fact of what a society is? So the context of the current concern, the fact that there is a forum today on this issue, comes out to a significant extent. It comes out of the fact that certain people employed at universities and students at universities were involved in a particular political movement. So that's kind of been at the origin, in a way, and it's still there as a central part of the problem. That's what I want to address it. One of the more recent developments or events in that was the now finally confirmed, appointed new chairman of Hong Kong U Council, Professor Arthur Lee, said, I believe a number of months ago, was reported as saying that the fall in international rankings of the University of Hong Kong are explainable in either one of two ways. Either the professors haven't been doing their job properly, or they are more dumb than previous generations of professors at the university. And he figured that we would probably prefer option number one as an explanation. Well, obviously we reject both explanations, but I think it's the first one that really seems to have most traction in public discussion in Hong Kong, the idea that the professors and the students haven't been doing their job. And that, of course, raises the question of what is the job of a professor, what is the job of a student? Have we been doing our jobs? What is our job? In particular, do we have any job in relation to politics? Do we have any responsibility in relation to politics, given our position in the university? And from now on, I'm not going to talk about the role of students in the university, because that's a slightly different and separate issue, but I'll really be focusing on what university staff, especially academic staff, not general staff so much, but really I think it's the responsibility that relates to academic staff of universities. So what is the responsibility of academic staff at universities in relation to politics? This connection, again, a general point I wanted to make was in relation to academic freedom, of course, as Johanna Chan has already pointed out. The context in which this is a question in Hong Kong today is a context in which many other forms of freedom are apparently, or at least people are worried that other forms of freedom in Hong Kong are being eroded. So again, it's not an isolated incident, it's not an isolated issue. The issue of academic freedom is related to press freedom, it's related to the freedom of publication, it's related to the freedom of expression of opinion, it's related to an independent judiciary, and it's in fact related, of course, to the fundamental constitutional status of Hong Kong as in terms of one country and two systems. So all of those forms of freedom are related, and that's why this one is important, or at least that's the context in which this one takes some of its importance. So when we think about politics in the university, one of the striking things we can see in Hong Kong at the moment is that everybody is accusing everybody else of political interference. All sides, well, let's say both sides accuse the other side of engaging in some kind of political interference. The reported discussion at Hong Kong Youth Council on the appointment of Professor Johannes Chan, apparently one of the comments was that he was a plant of the Civic Party, something of that nature. On January 3rd, I participated in a demonstration in which Arthur Lee himself was characterized as a political representative, political party representative in the council, party representative in the council. So we have both sides saying that the other side are engaging in or bending to or giving into perhaps political interference. And that's quite a striking fact about the current situation. And it does demand, I think, that we think about what exactly is going on when everyone is accusing everyone else of political interference. And we could maybe just simplify the whole debate and say, let's remove the word interference and just say everybody on all sides has some kind of political aspect or element to what they're doing. Maybe if we put it in that way, it wouldn't be such a problem. Maybe we would just have to recognize that there is a political aspect and a political element to pretty much most of what we do. And in fact, that's part of what I'm going to be suggesting today, is that politics really is everywhere, especially in universities, and quite rightly so. It cannot be removed. So we have both sides accusing the other side of political interference. We need to think about that relation between politics and the university. One way of beginning to think about it is in terms of what do we mean by politics? When people say that's political interference, what are they talking about? What does political interference mean? What is political? And I think we can, in very simple terms, or the most simple terms maybe, we can make a distinction between politics in a very narrow sense and politics in a much broader sense. In the narrow sense, politics we would refer to things like what we call political institutions, the institutions of government in Hong Kong, the Legislative Council, the Executive Council, the Office of the Chief Executive, and so on. All of that is obviously a part of politics. We would also include political parties, campaigns for LegCo elections, for district council elections, and so on. All of that is a part of politics. Members of political parties engage in political debates, political discussion. So in a narrow sense, when we talk about politics, that's something that we talk about. But there's also a broader sense in which we can talk about politics, in which politics is something that really refers to or denotes any and every aspect of our common life together as members of a political community. In other words, it really is members of a society. So in a sense, obviously, what we're doing here today is political. Not only because there are people here who are members of political parties, people who are elected members of the Legislative Council, but because all of us are here interested in a public issue, we're interested in hearing about it, talking about it, thinking about it, and we're interested in making our opinions heard. And that is a political activity. So we're all spending our Saturday afternoon actually engaging in politics. So in terms of the debate, one of the questions would be whether I, as someone who was employed by the university initially to teach philosophy, whether I should be doing this. Some people might say, well, the fact that I'm doing it on a Saturday afternoon is okay. I wrote most of these notes on Saturday morning, so maybe that's okay as well. Although the realities of the academic life, as those of you here who are academics will know, is that really we work 7 days a week. Maybe not 24 hours a day, but even when we're asleep, we're thinking. Really, it's true. We wake up in the morning with thoughts about a new paper we're going to write, new research we're going to do. So the question is this legitimate as a kind of activity, say for me, for example, to be engaged in? So I guess what I want to say is that if we need to, first of all, to think about those, or have in mind those two senses in which we can understand politics. I'm not a member of a political party, I'm not standing for a political election, but I am doing stuff that in the broader sense, is political. And I'm doing things which maybe I also would be subject to criticism for spending my time doing this kind of thing. Maybe I should be at home today writing philosophy papers rather than speaking. So the question, again, coming back to the question, can we keep politics out of universities? If we think about the narrow sense of politics in terms of political parties, political institutions, the chief executive and so on, well, it's pretty obvious that universities are publicly funded institutions. They're institutions that in some sense are working on behalf of the city of Hong Kong. They're working on behalf of the community. They're within the domain of politics. And of course, as we all know, the chief executive of Hong Kong is the chancellor of every university in Hong Kong. So in the narrow sense of politics, politics is already in the university. The university is already in politics, by definition, by the definition of the ordinance and the statutes. We are political, and by the nature of what we do, we contribute to, and we are engaged with, and will occasionally come into conflict with, political forces in the narrow sense of politics. So in the narrow sense of politics, we are political, and I would say necessarily so, or at least in some aspects of that necessarily so. In the second, broader sense of politics, the sense in which politics relates to all aspects of our shared lives together in communities and societies, we are, of course, also engaged in that shared life. The universities, you could say, broadly speaking, contribute to that shared life, that political life, in three key ways. First of all, obviously, in educating the young people. Universities have the fundamental role of contributing to the education of people, and therefore they do form the society and the politics of the city, or the society in which they operate. Secondly, they contribute to that through the pursuit of knowledge and research, which contributes to the society in which they operate. We're all familiar with the contribution, I think, aspect of the contribution that universities in Hong Kong make through their research, whether it's medical research, engineering research, humanities research, legal research, social science, social work, and so on. We make contributions to society at many, many levels through the work that we do at the university. So we are engaged in the political life of the city for that reason. The third way in which we do it is that we engage in discussion and debate on particular issues. So we regularly, as many of you here know, many of you who work at universities know it from one side, and many of you here who work for the media know it from the other side, that the media are always coming to us and asking us to comment on things. They'll come and ask us to comment on stuff that we know about or that we're perceived as having some sort of area of specialty in. And simply by doing that, we are already contributing, we are engaging in politics. And that, I hope nobody would say that that is something that we should not be doing. That kind of engaging in public life is something which is a part of the job of every academic. So one of the misconceptions that some people might have when they say, you know, you're falling in the world, your university is falling in the world rankings, you should get back to your laboratory, get back to your office, get back to your classroom and do that job. It would be a misunderstanding to think that that is our only job. Right? Our job is also, from time to time, to be in the newspaper, on television, on the radio, occasionally even to be on the street. It is also our job to do that. And that actually is nowadays is recognized in ways that, unfortunately, academics rebel against this to some extent, but we are now told that our research has to have impact, and we have to engage in what is called knowledge exchange. So it's now built into what our actual job description is, that we must engage actually in the social political life of Hong Kong and more generally outside Hong Kong too. There are lots of course, of controversial examples of academics engaging in political discussion, and political debate, and political activity, but there are also lots of non-controversial ones, which I think people can see can more easily perhaps see the value of those non-controversial contributions. One that comes to mind for me as a staff member at the University of Hong Kong is someone you might be familiar with, Professor C.Y. Jin, who I believe is known as the tree daddy of Hong Kong. He's always speaking out in defense of trees, especially around the area of Hong Kong University itself, but also more generally in Hong Kong. He's regularly in the media criticizing the government. And I think we value that because he is an expert on trees. He's passionate about trees, and we need someone with his status to come out and say the things that he says. So in doing that, he is engaging in politics. This is a political debate or at least it's a debate which has a political aspect. So the general point I guess I want to make about this, what I would say is the misconception, is I think the misconception would be to think that universities are an ivory tower which should be kept protected from political life. Universities are not, or should not, at least they should not operate in that way. The university is a part of the city of Hong Kong. The universities are part of the city of Hong Kong. And they engage in the political life of Hong Kong in many, many ways, as the ways I've described, and also through students and so on. And that's a vital part of what they do. So it would be a mistake to think, as some people I think perhaps like to think, that when you pursue academic research, the pursuit of truth, people might like to call it, there's an idea that truth is in some way pure, or that the only truth worth having is a truth that is pure. I'm not going to give you any philosophical references today, but one of my favorite philosophers tells us that truth is a thing of this world. Now, the idea of truth as being a pure, disconnected, something that is immune basically immune from power, is itself a mistake. Right? Every pursuit of truth is connected to political relations, social relations, human relations. And I think we have to recognize that. And if we see that, then we can see the work that we do as researchers and the work that students do as learning in universities as something which is necessary and vitally connected to politics in the broad sense, at the very least in the broad sense, and maybe occasionally from time to time also in the narrower sense of the politics of government institutions, political parties, and political debate in the everyday sense of political debate. And that brings me back to the topic of autonomy and academic freedom. Because if, as I've tried to argue, more generally, universities, academics, and students should be engaged, when appropriate, should be engaged in political issues. But in this particular issue, I think it is even more incumbent upon, especially academic staff, to be involved in the political debate about institutional autonomy and academic freedom. And it's crucial because, of course, everything that we do at the university depends upon the defense of these values. We won't be able to do anything if we lose academic freedom, if we lose institutional autonomy. Now, some people say, well, you still have academic freedom. What are you complaining about? You're all getting overly worried about something. You misunderstand the council's decision. You misunderstand the chief executive's motivation. You misunderstand Arthur Lee. Maybe Arthur Lee is the nice guy. he does have a PhD. You misunderstand it. There's nothing to worry about. Please go back to your laboratory, go back to your office, go back to your classroom, and do what you should be doing. It would be nice to be able to agree with that. I have a lot of sympathy with the president, the vice chancellor of my own university, Professor Peter Matheson. He says academic freedom is safe and secure at the University of Hong Kong. In his speech he gave to Hong Kong Youth Court in December, he says, I quote him, "In my opinion, academic freedom is alive and well at Hong Kong University." And then he goes on to say, so let's focus on our 10-year plan. We don't need to think about that. We need to think about getting back up in the rankings, making sure we have excellent teaching, learning, research, and staff, and so on. And as I said, I have sympathy for that. I would like to be able to simply agree with that. But so that, as I said, the Vice Chancellor, Peter Matheson, said that on December 17th. A little earlier on October the 2nd of last year, which was 3 or 4 days after the Council decision on the appointment of the Vice President for staffing, 3 days after that, the President, Peter Matheson, sent an email to all the staff at Hong Kong U, in which he addressed again the issue of academic freedom. And he said this, and I'll quote, he says, Hong Kong U is a place where academic freedom is cherished and protected, where academic staff are encouraged to pursue whatever subjects their interests dictate, irrespective of how controversial they may be, and that all assessments of credentials and performance will be based on academic merit according to internationally recognized standards. Now, he wrote that on October 2nd, a number of days after a meeting in which an appointment was, in which the candidate recommended by a selection committee was rejected. So it would seem that, and of course we don't have all the details, but it would seem that the decision that was made at Council, and that decision that was made by Council did not, as Professor Matheson would like us to believe, did not follow internationally recognized standards of credentials and performance of academic merit. So on that basis alone I would say, well, okay, if you say there's no threat to academic freedom is safe, I think there are legitimate grounds for people in the university community and the community more generally. There are legitimate grounds for people to be concerned that academic freedom is not only under threat, but it actually is being undermined. And if it can be undermined, if it has been undermined in such a high-profile case, there's no doubt it can be undermined much more easily in lower-profile cases. Johannes Chan has already brought up the question of promotions and tenures at universities and how those decisions are made. And it's very difficult to be, at least it would be nice to be able to reassure ourselves that those decisions are always made, as the President says, on academic merit according to internationally recognized standards. I think we do have legitimate ground for concern about that, and that is why this is an issue of concern. That is why, I mean, I would say there's a threat to academic freedom. And I think the threat is enough to warrant the actions that are being taken. The threat is enough to warrant the concern, the discussion, the debate. And in fact, the threat is enough to warrant, I believe, a review of the governance structures of all the universities in Hong Kong. Another, I guess, argument that would be used against the idea of having a review, again, this comes sometimes from my own Vice Chancellor, Peter Matheson, when he says, well, really what's happening in Hong Kong is business as usual. He says, look at Japan, look at the United States. Universities, publicly funded universities, are subject to political influence, let's say, public influence, and that's okay. We just have to deal with it and move on. I think that the reply to that, though, is that in Hong Kong, again, as I said before, in Hong Kong what's happening is this is not an isolated incident. This is happening in Hong Kong at a time when many of the political freedoms in Hong Kong appear to be under threat, appear to be are being undermined. So I think in Hong Kong, what I would say is that given the political situation in Hong Kong, the universities of Hong Kong need more robust safeguards for their academic freedom than before. If you needed one justification for why now, why should this be done now, it's precisely because of that surrounding political context. Because now the danger is greater and therefore the defense of that value should be greater. And there's no point waiting around until it's already been destroyed, because if it's destroyed, it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get it back. So we need to do it now. We need to make the point now. We need to press for a review of those governance structures right now before the damage is done. Okay, I'm just about running out of time. So let me just come back to my initial question, which is, can we keep politics out of the universities? As I said, I would say on principle, by definition, no, you never can. And then I would say further to that, in the current situation in Hong Kong, we certainly should not. While it would be nice, perhaps I would prefer, I'm not sure if I would prefer, but perhaps I would prefer to be at home today, working on a philosophy paper. But given what's happening, I think it is actually a duty, a responsibility of academic staff who can speak out, to actually do that, to speak out. It's already enough, worrying enough, that many, many academic staff actually do not have the freedom to speak out. If you don't yet have tenure, you can't say anything. If you're approaching the age of 60, you're going to be basically reapplying for your job at universities in Australia. I'm not approaching the age of 60. Nowhere near, nowhere near. Basically, by my calculation, it's about 5 years in the middle of a person's career when they are actually free to say things that maybe would be frowned upon by senior managers in their institution. And that itself is a very worrying fact. So I would just finish by saying that I think, first of all, I think the student engagement in pressing for change on these issues, I think, is admirable. Even if one doesn't agree with their tactics always, I think the fact that they want to do that, the fact that they see its importance is admirable. And I think what we need across Hong Kong is for more people within the universities, more employees of the universities, those who are free to do so, need to take a stand on these issues, need to speak out on these issues, and need to be involved in politics, and need to reject the idea that politics should be, even if it could be, kept out of universities. Thank you.